Hello, it's Martin from Wisely Automotive, and as you can see behind me I've got three very different electric cars. Now this is not quite our standard video, it will be more of a PSA to all of you, because over the past couple of years the used car market has been absolutely crazy, especially when it comes to electric stuff. There were supply chain issues, and that combined with the strong demand for EVs meant that prices were very strong. In fact, very often you would have to pay over list price to get a used EV because it meant you could get one immediately. That obviously discouraged many people from getting EVs. However, we are happy to report that depreciation is now a thing again on EVs. I know, a very weird thing to get excited about. There is a plethora of reasons why this is happening, so we will sit down with Arthur and probably do a separate, almost a podcast style video where we discuss everything in detail if you're interested. But what it means for you if you're in the market for a used EV is that there is finally a lot of choice, and there are some excellent bargains to be had. This ID.4 is an excellent example. Don't worry, I'm not trying to sell you anything. In fact, this one has already sold and I'm going to be delivering it tomorrow. And that's in some shape or form the case for the rest of the cars in the lineup. So this is more of just food for thought to see what's available at what price points, at least as of end of January in 2023. So yeah, the VW ID.4, in many ways we could nickname it the fat BMW i3. We have done many videos on why we love the i3, so this is really a compliment. There's a rumor out there that VW poached quite a few engineers after the i3 project came to an end, and they worked on the ID lineup, and you can really see some of the design philosophies carry over. So for example, you've got a rear-wheel drive dedicated EV architecture. Even though the carbon fiber is no longer here because of cost savings, you still have that amazing turning circle, which we know from the i3. The drive selector on the steering column is also extremely similar, the open and airy cabin, and so on. And this is what I want to talk about in a bit more detail, because there are a few notes worth mentioning. VW has been recently having a lot of bad press about bad build quality, or cheap materials rather, and terrible software, especially for the infotainment. So let's see. The seats themselves and the materials on the dash, I will not go as far as saying as premium, but they're definitely much less offensive in the ID.4 than the ID.3. We've had a couple of ID.3s, but this is a significant step up. Especially the seats, all of them get the same form with the kind of Alcantara or microfiber middle and vegan leather side bolsters. The dashboard and especially the door cards are much nicer to touch than in the ID.3, even though most of the switchgear is shared. And on the software front, VW has been pushing out updates over time. It took a bit longer than we would have liked, but we are finally there. This car came with the version 3.0 from factory, and we have not had any issues at all regarding the software. In fact, the responsiveness is quite good, no weird glitches, anything like that. And the managers have definitely listened to some user feedback, because now, for example, we do have battery percentage and estimated range in the instrument cluster at the same time, and so on. What I'm trying to say is that even though it's not perfect, it's definitely not a deal breaker anymore. And it really shouldn't be, because the main selling point is in the back. Look, you may not get the frunk, but because of how VW decided to package the car, the benefits of a full EV architecture are still here. Keep in mind, the front seat is set in my comfortable driving position, and I've got tons of leg room. More importantly, I can stretch my feet underneath the seat in front because of the upright SUV stance of the ID.4. I've got excellent thigh support, so even on longer journeys, adults will be comfortable in the back. You can definitely see why this is a very popular choice for Uber drivers in London. And lastly, excellent headroom and also air vents and USB-C ports. The same thing goes for the boot. It's absolutely massive, and it will happily haul dogs or any sports equipment you may need for your kids' activities. I hope you stuck with me, because this brings me on to the reason why this car is on the list, and in fact why it is the #1 car on this list. VW does not make the used car buying experience easy. There are many different battery sizes, motor power tunes, and if you go into Auto Trader you will see many different trim levels, and it's very difficult to navigate the entire thing, because sometimes the trim levels mean different battery sizes, sometimes they do not. There have been various changes to what is standard equipment, especially as COVID supply chains hit. Fun fact, this is a car which has the COVID spec on it, and usually that would mean that it has fewer features, but in case of VW, The base levels actually got more features in an effort to streamline production, so what I would recommend is have a browse, but once you are ready to purchase or you want to talk more about these cars, get in touch directly with an EV specialist and see what they have in stock, and they will be able to advise you exactly what every car has and which one will be the best fit for you. At least that's the theory. This particular example is the Pure, so it has the smallest 52 kWh battery, and you may say, oh, that's quite small, especially for the size of the car once you see it in the flesh. But there is a very good use case for it. You know how many people have 2 cars in their household? And as I hinted earlier, one of those 2 is usually dedicated for everyday stuff like taking kids to school, to activities, taking the dog to the park, and so on. So at that point, why do you need the massive range? I will give you one reason why you should not have the massive range, and that is because you can save yourself about £6,000 when you are shopping on the used market and you go for the smaller battery size. It will still do the job fine, especially if you can charge at home. It still has CCS rapid charging, which supports up to about 100 and something kilowatts off the top of my head. So the occasional longer journey or a quick top-up is not a problem. And if you look at the entire value proposition, you are getting a 2022 ground-up electric car with tons of space on the inside, yet still very easy to maneuver, especially in the city, thanks to the tight turning circle and the generous standard driver assistance systems, and all of that for under £34,000. So if I may suggest, forget looking at ex-demo Tiguans or a year-old BMW X1s, this is the car for you. Enough of the ID.4, you're looking for the exact opposite things in a car, you want something a bit more fun, a bit more spicy. Well, that's the Tesla Model 3, a car which probably doesn't need any introduction whatsoever. It really skyrocketed Tesla into a mass market car manufacturer, and there are many good reasons for that. The car is truly excellent, and at this point probably my favorite EV on the market. You've got excellent range, and not just thanks to a big battery, but thanks to excellent efficiency, which really starts to matter a lot these days when the cost of electricity is going up. Super smooth drivetrain tuning, good all-wheel drive system, yet lots of power available pretty much instantly without any delay. They really are super fun to drive, relatively lightweight electric cars. On the inside, this is very much personal preference, but the minimalist design has aged beautifully. It still looks as fresh as on the day of the release. And contrary to popular belief, the Model 3, despite sitting underneath the S and X, has actually brought several build and material quality improvements to the Tesla lineup. So if we look, for example, the top of the dashboard is nice and squishy, the door panels are nice and soft, you've got Alcantara inserts, the gaps and the stitching is on point. So even though I never thought I would say this on video, the Model 3 is actually better built, or at least the materials feel much nicer, than the VW ID.4. Yeah. And only time will tell, but so far we have had examples with 50-60,000 miles and no rattles. Any issues which we do experience are relatively minor, and obviously if you buy from a dealer instead of privately on the used market, you should be able to count on some sort of a warranty. Beyond the car itself, the biggest selling point still has to be the supercharger network. Even though third-party chargers are getting better and there are more of them, the explosive growth in the EV market means that they are getting busier every single day. With the Tesla, it's all nicely integrated. You just type into the sat-nav where you want to go, and the car will automatically calculate where you need to stop, how long for. If a certain station becomes unexpectedly busy, you get automatically rerouted to a quicker one. So it's all very, very clever. You don't need to fumble with any payment methods, because the moment you plug in, the network recognizes the car and bills you accordingly. So it's all a very sleek and polished way of doing long trips. So especially if you need to do many long business trips and you can't afford any downtime or to plan the charges yourself, this is the car to go for. Likewise, the software and the entire infotainment system is absolutely the best in the business. Tesla is really committed to software updates. You get years and years of updates, all of them for free. They do not seem to bog down the system at all. It's still as responsive and quick as it was the moment it left the factory. In case there are any little bugs, they usually get squashed in subsequent iterations, and the updates are downloadable over the air. And it doesn't apply just to the infotainment and the screen itself, but pretty much every module in this car has the OTA capability, so the likelihood of you actually having to go to a Tesla service center is extremely low. Let's talk value for money though. because Tesla is right up there with the premium competitors like BMW, Audi, Mercedes in terms of pricing, and not everybody can afford a 40, 50 or 60 grand car. On top of that, it seemed like Tesla in fact set the benchmark in terms of low depreciation, and in many cases the cars were actually appreciating on the used market, which is absolutely unheard of. But it meant that even if you were willing to go down to a 2-3-year-old car, you couldn't, because they would still be very much in the same upper price range. That has all changed a couple of months ago as they came off leases and started entering the used market. And not that many people seem to have realized that, so there are some absolute bargains to be had. Just a quick background, generally speaking, as cars depreciate, in case you had many different trim levels, that price gap between them starts getting smaller and smaller as years go on. And that's really the case here. So the best deals are on cars which are either the long range or in fact the performance, because the performances are now maybe £1,000 more, if that, for comparable cars. And at least in my eyes, you get a much more fun car to drive. The other thing is full self-driving and enhanced autopilot. Very, very expensive options if you buy them from Tesla. Doesn't matter whether you're buying them on a used car or a brand new one. You can unlock the functionality later because all the hardware is present, but you are paying almost £3,500 for enhanced autopilot and double that for full self-driving. The deceptively named full self-driving is not exactly full self-driving, at least in the UK for now, and it doesn't give you that many features. I've covered that and I will leave that linked in the top right hand corner. But just like with the different powertrains, if you're buying used, you are paying maybe £1,000 more for the highest driver assistance tier. And if you're planning to keep the car long term, it will get the software updates and it will only get better and better by the day. So that's one way of future-proofing yourself for not much money. Speaking of money, Tesla has recently dropped their brand new car prices, which pushes the market further down, but you are still talking about £50,000 to £60,000 for a nicely equipped Model 3 long range or performance. The performance on the used car market, with the most expensive red paint, mid-30s for a car which is a couple of years old, still under Tesla's warranty in case you are worried about reliability, and you get a proper performance electric vehicle for the price of a brand new MG. So again, something to consider. And lastly, our beloved i3. As I mentioned before, I'm not even going to attempt to list all the reasons why we love it, because there are simply too many. It's an absolutely fabulous city car, super lightweight thanks to the carbon fiber architecture, fun to drive, rear-wheel drive. In the world of cookie-cutter crossovers, actually looking at you, ID.4, something truly, truly different, yet still practical and usable on a day-to-day basis. On the electric side of things, the drivetrain really stood the test of time. The power and regen tuning is absolutely spot on and much better than many brand new EVs hitting the market right now. Yes, the maximum charging power is only 50 kilowatts, but the curve is nice and flat, and the battery chemistry doesn't seem to be that sensitive to cold temperatures. So you can get very consistent charging experience regardless of weather conditions, how long you've been driving for, and so on. And that's the main reason why we recommend the i3 as the best first EV you can get. It really gets you used to driving electric without many of the pain points with other earlier EVs suffer from. To comment on the market situation, just like with the Tesla, the higher trim levels have really started depreciating quite rapidly, so the difference between the 94 amp hour and the biggest 120 amp hour battery is no longer as significant as it used to be, so many people just jump for the biggest battery pack straight away and get the best range possible with only a couple of tens of kilos of weight penalty. And if you look at our portfolio at Wisely, with i3 being our core product, we have started stocking a lot more 120 amp hours than before. If you're not quite committed to fully jump to electric, but you want to try your best and you want to experience firsthand what living with an EV is like, the most compromise-free solution are the versions equipped with the optional petrol engine, which is called range extender. It used to be offered with the smallest and the middle battery size, so your electric range is mostly unaffected. You can still get them with rapid charging, so even longer journeys are possible to do entirely on electricity alone, but in case you miscalculate or chargers are broken or busy, you can just jump to the next ones on petrol. Price-wise, we're finally slowly moving again to the magical 10k mark on the entry level. I'm saying again because there used to be i3s available for £10,000, usually very old and high mileage examples, but nevertheless, if you really wanted to get one, you could get one. With our older examples, you may notice that they are maybe a tiny bit pricier than others, And that's simply because we truly know these cars through and through, and we want to prepare them properly. And at the end of the day, that costs some money. And you may think to yourself, oh, you can do some of the work yourself, or hopefully, you grab yourself a bargain. Well, a common problem on the early ones are, for example, motor mounts, which are cracking because the motor brackets were made using plastic. They got later redesigned and now are made out of aluminium. But there are many early cars in the market still with the original parts, and many of them are in fact damaged. And most dealers don't bother to check them because they simply do not know that it is a common issue. Whereas it's a thing which we check on every single i3 which goes out from us. To get this problem fixed, you can take the car to the main dealer, and the parts and labor are going to cost you over £1,000. So good luck getting a third-party warranty provider in case you bought from a dealer to pay for that. At which point your bargain of a car goes out of the window, because add on that a couple of little things and it will cost the same, if not more, than a well-prepared example. But going back, the sweet spot on these i3s is somewhere in the 19 to 22,000 mark at this point. You have to be realistic. You can't expect an almost brand new example with all the options on it, but you will definitely be able to get one of the bigger battery packs with some extras as well, like for example the parking package or the adaptive cruise control. These i3s, they can be quite sensitive to specification, because just like with most German manufacturers, the options are not bundled into trim levels, but are selectable pretty much a la carte. I think it's fair to say that's enough talking from my side. I just wanted to give you a quick update so you can see what's available on the market, so you know what to consider with your next vehicle purchase. To quickly recap, the ID.4 is an excellent family car. With the small battery, it's an absolute bargain for a daily family hauler. Next up, we've got the Tesla Model 3. To be fair, regardless of whether you like EVs or not, if you're looking at a car with these performance figures, I think you will struggle to find any modern car with similar levels of power for the same amount of money. And of course, on the EV side of things, you've got the excellent technology and the supercharger network. And lastly, the i3, an absolutely lovely example, which was way ahead of its time and has aged beautifully. So truly a car unlike any other. Oh, and I just realized I haven't covered one thing which is maybe of interest if you're new to EVs, and that is battery degradation. The short answer is, don't worry about it. The ID.4 is still a bit too new, so we don't have much data for it, but we have sold some very high mileage Teslas and BMW i3s, and at this point we are about 700 EVs in, and out of those 700 cars, not a single one needed a new high voltage battery. So with these cars which have proper battery thermal management systems, it's absolutely fine, and it's not something we would worry about too much. Excellent. I think everything is covered. Any questions or any other bargain EVs which you know about, leave them in the comments below. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and see you in the next one.